The title of this book may tempt some unwary reader with the hope of tidings from a spirit world. Such is not my subject, although not perhaps without a certain affinity to poets and mystics. I am myself a convinced materialist, and the singularity of my book is perhaps this, that it traces in spiritual things only their spiritual quality, whilst planting them, as far as their existence is concerned, unequivocally on natural ground, and showing how they spring out of it. The realm here to be described is therefore not another world, nor even a hidden metaphysical agency alleged to animate the whole universe or to create it. What I call spirit is only that inner light of actuality or attention which floods all life as men actually live it on earth. It is roughly the same thing as feeling or thought. It might be called consciousness. It might be identified with the pensée or cogitatio of Descartes and Spinoza. Yet there is an important circumstance that leads me to prefer the term spirit. In modern philosophy, the notion of mind has become confused and treacherous, so that in whatever direction we press it into consistency, mind ceases to be mind. Pushed inwards, it may be reduced to a vanishing ego, the grammatical counterpart, impersonal and empty, of all feelings and objects alike. Driven outwards, mind may be lost in its objects and identified with the existence and movement of a phenomenal world or the history of events. Again, mind may be conceived dynamically, called will or life, and turned into a magic law or impulsion supposed to compel things to become what they are, and it may be conceived analytically and dissolved into a multitude nowhere assembled, or of separate data, or a series of feelings, each feeling itself and none feeling any other, or instead of data, which after all are thinkable and given, mind may be dissolved into a diffused, unconscious substance, still paradoxically called feeling, out of which organic bodies and centers of apprehension might be composed. Yet all these results are abdications, and living mind is none of those things. It is a moral stress of varying scope and intensity, full of will and selectiveness, arising in animal bodies, and raising their private vicissitudes into a moral experience. This inner light is indeed requisite for focusing impressions and rendering them mentally present, but it is biologically prior to them, vital and central, a product of combustion, a leaping flame, a fountain and seat of judgment. I therefore call it spirit, not that I think it either a substance or a physical power or moral focus of life, where the perspectives of nature are reversed as in a mirror and attached to the fortunes of a single soul. My subject is not experience surveyed impartially, as in a book of descriptive psychology, but experience viewed at a certain angle, in the measure in which it torments or educates the spirit. Nor is my subject the whole of moral philosophy or the life of reason, for there all forms of health and government would need to be appreciated, might be content to remain purely spontaneous and worldly, without in the least quarreling with nature. Spirit is in its interest somewhat withdrawn from nature, as are painting and music and history. The very study of nature, questioning nature, and even in loving and praising nature, loving and praising it only for being friendly to the spirit. The study of the realm of spirit is therefore an exercise in self-knowledge, an effort on the part of spirit to clarify and to discipline itself, not so much that a new province is added to moral life, although this happens sometimes in religion, poetry, and music, or even in mathematics, as that the common world takes on a new color, is focused in a new center of interest, as when a man falls in love. This transformation or conversion would not be necessary if the psyche and the world moved in perfect harmony, as they do at certain happy moments in childhood and youth. But revision grows possible and urgent for the spirit as it gets more and more entangled in all the contrarieties of existence. Being always alive and suffering more or less, spirit then becomes aware of its natural claims and interests, in contrast to the endless miscellany of events. The world turns into a school, life into a pilgrimage, and spirit itself, though it be as native to the world as laughter and tears, feels itself a surprised stranger, a monarch mockingly served, a prisoner tortured, or a lover entranced. The spirit I speak of is thus nothing hypothetical, nothing mystical or cosmic, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, or that circulates in the unenduring clouds, and knows no insulated spot, no chasm, and no solitude. On the contrary, actual spirit is well acquainted with solitude, with insulation, and with chasms, and this not by any accident, and it dwells not in setting suns, but in human bodies, bodies breeding a thousand passions and diseases by which the spirit also is tormented, so that it congenitally longs at first for happiness and at last for salvation, that no fabulous diffusion of spirit over infinite spaces could remove this predicament in which actual spirit finds itself, is vouched for by Indian speculation. There heavens and hells are posited ad libitum, and many gods with many alternative names and virtues. Yet throughout those dazzling, confusing spaces, throughout those transmigrations and cataclysms, the spirit takes counsel with itself, observes everything, endures everything, by outlasting everything, renounces everything, and by questioning everything, liberates itself. The great thundering governing gods of popular religion are far from being the most advanced of spirits in insight or holiness. Insight and holiness may appear anywhere, in anchorite or beggar, in prince or poet, even in a child, when once the illusion of the will is pierced, and the bias of time, place, and person is overcome. All things in their particular urgency and lure are then reduced to vain, cruel, and lovely accidents, while the spirit itself withdraws into that infinite light, that infinite potentiality which is the source of its own heat and light. Seen from there, our natural loves are not stultified, they remain a part of what the heart desires, but they no longer stand alone. They have counterweights in eternity. The truth envelops them, and the joy and sorrow of existence are balanced and lost in the peace of being. The Indians and the mystics are inspired people, and their language does not always bear critical examination. There is a paradox, for instance, in spirit seeming to turn against life and to renounce it, when in spirit life has for the first time become quite alive. But here we fall into misunderstanding. Spirit can never condemn or undermine natural life. This can be done only by some rival center of life at the same biological level tending to steal away matter or energy from its ancestors or neighbors. Spirit may give warnings, it may be austere or ascetic, but it is never competitive. That would be a sure sign of non-spiritual forces at work. Spirit requires no new matter or energy besides that of its organ, but only order and harmony in the matter or energy at hand. It is therefore charitable and sympathetic to whatever forms of life may have taken elsewhere. It loves, but its love is not physical or procreative, multiplying commitments, rather reflective and spiritual, understanding those commitments, absolving them from their mutual guiltiness, and consoling them for their vanity and ultimate dissolution. In so doing, it simply fulfills its own commitment to see things as they are. Such healing intelligence destroys nothing. Such charity complicates and embitters nothing. It is neither an accomplice nor an accuser of fate. Spiritual insight is possible only at the top of life, but in fulfilling life, it reviews life, and in recollection raises existence into a tragic image, though this be an image of transiency, vanity, and suffering. There is such joy in forming it that it often seems unutterably beautiful, or the sheer scope and victory of that revelation may drown all vision and light. Spirit then seems to have passed beyond existence, which is an ambiguous way of speaking. The detail of existence may have lapsed from view in the sheer intensity of concentrated thought, or thought and spirit with it may actually have ceased to exist, death having been ushered in not by ghastly weakness or violent pain, but by a last summing up and a grand finale. That is a question of circumstances, more or less noble and pompous. The liberation of spirit that is internal and essential to spirit has nothing to do with death or with another life, but comes at any moment and pervades all times when intuition supplants convention and passion rises into self-knowledge. The life of spirit thus has a natural movement and natural goals, which I will now endeavor to describe. But let me not be misunderstood as if I had taken it upon me to censor everything that is not spiritual. However much a naturalist may celebrate or even share the free life of spirit, he cannot consistently assign to it more than a relative importance. Salvation and enlightenment may be all important from the spiritual point of view, but this point of view has no absolute preeminence in the universe. It is comparable to our natural interest in human survival, in science, or in some particular art like music. Absolutely legitimate interest, physically inevitable at certain junctures, but special and morally optional in the context of things at large. This relativity is betrayed by a spontaneous variety and a secret contradiction even in the ultimate oracles of spirit. Pure intellect may say, I dominate, I am not dominated. A pure heart may answer, I love, I do not ask to be loved. Buddha may be overheard saying, overcome the will, renounce preference, and you have entered nirvana. Who shall gainsay these maxims or improve upon them? Yet this desire to cease from willing is evidently a form of will. So are this selfless love and this pride in understanding. Thus the inner life of spirit is a part of natural life, inevitable and perhaps tragic. The contrast we may draw between it and life in the world can be only partial contrast. Spirit pursues a perfection more inward and chastened than worldly arts and ambitions, but it would not exist or have a possible perfection to pursue if it were not a natural faculty in a natural soul.